A very warm welcome to all our listeners. We are delighted to bring to you the fourth episode of our podcast series, The Alumni Talkies. I am Ishan, and with me is my co host, Lieta. And today we are delighted to host Mr. Prasad. Prasad sir is a reputed commercial banker and thinker with over 14 years of experience as a part of financial services organizations like Kotak Mahindra, HSBC, Bajaj Finserv, etc. Currently, he is the EVP and regional business leader at Yes Bank. Credit analysis is one of his forte, along with P&L management and more. He is also working towards exploring new ventures at his end. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on, and it's my pleasure.
Great, sir. So, sir, firstly, I just tell you that we have curated a bunch of questions from our batch, and we are very
Okay.
much looking forward to asking you that so that all the queries for our batchmates are resolved. So, thank you again. Starting with the first question, sir. So, what are the most common credit metrics banks usually look at?
Okay. So, just a heads up, when I'm, discussing any of the questions with you, it will be
Yes.
from the perspective of, commercial banking, because that
Okay.
is where I have spent all of my time. They are not, I mean, the answers will not be so relevant towards retail banking. I hope that's okay with you guys.
Right. Yes, sir. Definitely.
Yeah. So when we talk about the credit metrics from the banking perspective, there are three main things which any banker looks at. Whenever you have any credit proposal, there are three main things. One is the need. Where is the need for the client? So you assess the need basis the financial statements, looking at the business, having a discussion with all the stakeholders. Is there
Right.
a need? Why the company or the business needs funds? The
Right.
second credit parameter which normally we look at is if there is a need, then what is the quality of the credit? I mean, do you really want to take that call and lend money to that business or that company?
Hmm.
In that, so you have a look at the balance sheet, you have a look at the ratios, you have a look at the liquidity, you have a look at how are the returns, what is the profitability of the business, how is the
Right.
operating cycle, and basis that you take a call that yes, there is a need and there is a fair comfort, we can lend to this customer. And finally, the third aspect which comes into the picture is you plan for the worst, right? So you say,
Hmm.
let's say you lend today, but tomorrow the asset goes bad. What do you do? So
True.
that is
Yeah.
where your security comes into the picture. So you look at the quality of the collateral.
Right.
You look at the promoter standing. Okay. You look at can you have some kind of a structure which is self liquidating in nature.
Hmm.
So these are the very very broad parameters that bankers normally look at. And when we go into the specific credit metrics, you will have, you look at your liquidity ratios, like what is the current ratio, what is the quick ratio. You look at when you're assessing for the working capital, you look at the turnover ratios, you look at the operating cycle, you look at how efficient the operating cycle is. You do a
Right.
peer comparison. So you have a look at the other players in the similar industry. How are their financials? You look at what is the capital structure, what is the gearing, how much is the promoter's own funds, where are they
Right.
deployed in the business. And then of course, in today's scenario, increasingly it is a credit history, because you have things like CIBIL, you have things
Hmm.
like the SMA checks, wherein the bankers have started giving each other heads up wherever there are accounts which are going bad. So these are
Right.
the broad parameters that you look at when you are looking at credit.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much, sir, for like that was a really comprehensive answer. Like it had a lot of insights buried within it. So the next question, sir, which we have, like it was a very common question a lot of students had asked, and it is what type of a person makes a good credit analyst?
So see, in the course of your, your in the course in your PGDM or MBA, whatever,
Yes.
you will learn everything that is there to do with credit analysis in terms of the theory part of it.
Right.
So you will learn to see, how to read a balance sheet, what to look at in a P&L account, what are the ratios, what is the significance of each ratio, how do you calculate that. And once you go into the real world,
Hmm.
all these things are available at the click of a button, and you just click your mouse and all these things are available today. It's so
Right.
simple. But what is going to differentiate you as a good credit analyst or as a good credit person is how do you interpret those numbers. So what you need to understand is that the business drives the numbers and not the other way around, as a lot of credit analysts make the mistake that they only look at the numbers. What you need to
Right.
understand is that there is a business and hence there are numbers. So understand the numbers in the context of the business. If you can do that, and that is, easier said than done. But if you can do that, you will be a really, really good credit person. And another very important attribute is ask questions. Ask difficult questions. Ask questions where the person who has put the proposal in front of you, or the company's representatives or the promoters, ask them difficult questions wherein they understand that you know you have done your homework. So
Yes,
that's important to me.
yeah. Having taking proper analysis and having a proper understanding with respect to the business, along with challenging oneself, will definitely help be a very good credit analyst, as you said.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Going ahead, sir, I would like to know, how do you manage risk in your personal life?
So see, I mean, it's this is a really, it's a very very simple question. See, for me, I try and plan, and to the extent possible, whatever there is in my professional life, the same thing I try to follow in my personal life. That before rushing headlong into anything, I ask questions, I try and plan, and look at all the possible scenarios. I mean, that's the way I manage my risk. But yes, I would like to tell this to all of you guys who are soon to step into the corporate world. See, be ready to handle risks and uncertainties in your corporate life. Okay. And don't don't be bogged down by them. Okay. Accept it as a way of life, because that is what it is increasingly going to be. The risk, the uncertainty, and the pace of change is only going to go up, and you guys have to be really really well prepared to handle it. That's my two thoughts about it.
Yes, sir. I think it's a very interesting opinion, because many people, like in general, tend to be risk averse, and they don't want to take up risk in the fear of losing out. So, going ahead, I would also want to know your thoughts regarding India's current credit system, which is now the lowest in the investment grade. So, what do you think are the steps that need to be taken in order to improve this? And when do you see us getting an A rating?
So honestly, I mean, I'm not sure I would be the right person to answer this question, because the best minds in our country are currently working on this. But what I can tell you from my experience and working within the banking sector and working as a commercial banker, what I can tell you is that it's just a matter of time. Okay. We have had a few difficult years. Plus, the pandemic has really challenged the entire globe, the entire world. Similarly, there have been challenges in the Indian economy also. But we have a very very strong demand. Okay, we still have the demographic advantage which is there with us. So I am not really sure. I would not be the right person to comment on the specific steps which the government or the policymakers should take. But what I can definitely tell you is that it's just a matter of time. There will definitely be an improvement, because all the underlying themes, all the underlying basic necessities that are required, we have that. So it is only a matter of time. All of us need to be patient. We need to do our bit, and we need to continue putting in efforts. The results will be there for everyone to see soon.
Right, sir. So I believe that the key points which you mentioned were that we already have everything in place. We just need to be patient and
Yeah,
keep putting in effort.
we have everything in
Right.
place. We have like I said, the demographic advantage is still there. We have a huge
True.
demand in our country. We have a young
Right.
population. We have people entering into the workforce, and slowly there are a lot of things coming into the place in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the policies.
Right.
So it's just a matter of time. We need to be patient, and we need to continue giving efforts.
Right. So like the only way from here is up.
Correct.
So moving on. So I would like to know your take on the recent proposal to recapitalize state-owned banks and set up a bad bank to absorb the non-performing loans from a commercial point of view?
Yeah, so this is where, yes, I can definitely give you my perspective. I think it's an interesting move, and it is also the need of the hour, because if you look at the banking sector, whether it is the public sector banks or the private sector banks, because between the PSUs and the private sector banks, we cover almost more than 80% of the banking in India. So
Right.
between these two sets, the ratio of NPAs has gone up significantly in the last around 5 to 6 years. So the cycle really started after 2013. So I would say 7 years,
Right.
2013. So you take the best of the banks today. I mean, you take even HDFC or Kotak within the private sector, or you take, let's say, an SBI. So if you look at the historical NPA ratio and the NPA ratio which they are running today, even though in absolute terms in the best banks it may seem small, but you will see that compared to their own history, the NPAs have gone up. So there is definitely some capital which is getting stuck. And today, like I said for the earlier question, that everything is in place. So it is just a matter of time. So one of the things where the time factor is going to be important is that businesses need timely funding. So if the banking sector, which is the main supplier of credit to the businesses, has to function, the capital has to be freed up. And that is where the bad bank is going to play a huge role. That if the commercial banks can shift part of their bad assets to this bank, it will free up their capital to do fresh lending. And this bad bank can, in a concentrated manner, with a single point agenda, look at the recoveries of these loans. So it will be a win-win situation. So yes, in my opinion, I believe it's a step in the right direction.
Yes, sir. We truly agree with that as well. It should be carried out in a more structured and detailed manner, and
Absolutely.
definitely we will reap the benefits out of it as well. Going on with the next question, this is a question that I am very inquisitive to know the answer to. How would you handle an important long-time business client seeking a loan that your risk assessment tells you is not safe for the bank to make?
Okay, so this is a very interesting question, and we face this situation quite frequently. And all of you guys who will soon enter the corporate world, if any of you become corporate or commercial bankers, you will also face this. So understand this. See, the first and foremost fiduciary duty of a banker is to safeguard the money of the depositors. Okay. The bank's profitability comes next. Your first duty is the safety of the money because it is your depositors' money. So in that situation, you will come across scenarios where you feel that there are the credit decision should not be taken. You should not be lending money to, let's say, a particular business or to a particular company. Sometimes it happens that you have existing customers who come to you saying, we want additional funds, and this is the project that we have, and would you be interested? And then you are in a competitive world today. You, at the back of your mind, you're thinking that, if I say no, there will be some other guy who will do it, and I might lose the business, I might lose the relationship. What do I do? But in such a scenario, please understand that your first fiduciary duty is towards your depositors. And I have faced this quite a few times. And it is, you have to walk with a very fine balance. You have to gently but firmly tell your customer that, at this juncture, we will not be able to go ahead. The more knowledgeable amongst your customers will understand it when you explain it to them, because nobody works in isolation today. Okay, so if there is a certain deficiency that you find in a particular credit proposal, the person who has prepared it very well understands it, and then he may understand and appreciate the fact that you don't want to take the risk. And yes, there will be certain customers who will not appreciate this fact. They may say, if you don't do it, I will move on to some other bank, and you will lose the business. And I think it's there. It's a part of the game. Sometimes, you will lose the business, and that is where your experience, knowledge, and maturity as a banker will come into the picture, when you understand that which are the credits which you should be underwriting and taking, and which are the risks which you should be avoiding and moving forward. So this is the way you tell your client that, as a bank, as an organization, we feel that at this juncture we will not be able to take this risk. Explain it to him. In my personal experience, 8 out of 10 times the client understands, Sometimes the client might actually come back to you and then tell you that, okay, you are not willing to take this risk. So please advise me. How do I go about it? If the relationship is that good, if you are giving him that kind of value, I have had clients who have come back to me after I have said no, saying, okay, we understand and we want your opinion how we should be going ahead. Then you can advise them, you will have to bring in more funds of yours, or the promoters funding will have to go up, or you might want to wait for 6 months to 1 year when the situation improves, or you can give him some other solution which you may have. So this it's a very very pertinent question, and especially those amongst who will end up as bankers, you will definitely face this scenario sooner or later.
Yes, sir. Knowing how to handle the clients carefully and keeping them happy is as important as knowing the intricacies of the business. And experiencing such kind of situations and having more experience helps you to professionally deal with such clients.
Absolutely. See, this is where your experience comes into the picture, and this is where your, what do you say, what we call within banking is, this is where your relationship with your client comes into play. So, if you are somebody whom the client understands that you are adding value to him, it's not just that you have given a loan and he's repaying it and servicing the interest, but you are his partner in his business. He will definitely appreciate the fact, and he will definitely take cognizance when you say that there is some risk which you will not want to take at that juncture.
Yes, definitely agreed on that. Going back to history, I would like to ask you what lessons were learned and incorporated in today's financial system with respect to the 2008 financial crisis, when the financial markets around the world were showing signs of a reckoning for years-long binge on cheap credit.
So again, going back in my own experience, I started my career after my MBA in the year 2006. So within 2 years, we had this meltdown in 2008. So a lot of lessons have been learned. A lot of things have changed, but there are certain things which probably we are again going back into the same phase. So if you see the crisis of 2008, there were certain features to it. Okay, so it was basically it started in the US, and because of the interconnectedness in the economies today, it spread all across the world. Within the US also, why did it start? It started because there was easy availability of money, interest rates were low, and somewhere there was a relaxation in terms of the credit assessment, and there were a lot of complicated structured products which were being sold. Now if you see, it has been almost 12, 13 years since that. In terms of where we stand in terms of the availability of the money, there is still a lot of liquidity in the system. If you look at whether it is the interest rates in the US, in the UK, or if you take closer to home in for our own policy rates which RBI is deciding, we are also at the lowest. So there is liquidity in the system today also. In terms of easy availability of credit, it is questionable. It is not as easily available as maybe it was during 2008. But still today, with the government pushing for credit, you can understand that banks are under pressure to lend. But yes, what has definitely changed is that banks and bankers are now looking at the credit worthiness of the borrower really, really closely, which was missing in the years leading up to 2008. In the years leading up to 2008, anybody and everybody with even the worst credit history was getting loans. So that is why you had these subprime and substandard loans which were just floating around. Thankfully, we are still not at that stage, not in the global economy, and definitely not here in India. So we are still looking at the credit worthiness of individuals as well as businesses very, very closely. There is a lot of risk averseness which is there in the banking system even today, which is good in one way. Coming back to the products, yes, a lot of products which were really, really complicated and difficult to understand, which were there during the years leading up to 2008, you will find that they are virtually not there now. But the flip side is that their place has been taken by a few different products. Now, the question mark again is that, are these products really being sold in the proper manner? That is what we need to ask. And the answer to this will only time will tell us, because there is no, it's a judgmental call. Only time will tell whether there has been a proper selling, or there has been mis-selling. So yes, I guess there have a lot of lessons have been learned. But then again, we are in the current scenario, we are again looking at a very, very different kind of a risk in the global economy. With
True.
there is still a lot of liquidity. At some point of time, central banks around the world will have to start sucking out this liquidity. So we don't know what is going to happen then. But like I said, it's like we are on the bridge and we are building it as we are going ahead. So anybody's guess is as good as it gets.
Right. So we really, really appreciate you patiently answering so many questions. We really thank you so much for taking out time from your hectic schedule and answering our questions. It was an incredibly insightful talk and will really benefit all of our listeners. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to engaging with you again in the future. Thank you again, sir, so much.
So thanks a lot for having me over, and it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.